Thank you so much for being here. I met Chris, seems to be about a year ago, I believe. And through that experience, I don't know, two or three visits, he was sharing with me. He was sharing with me his practice, his Buddhist practice. And he was sharing with me that it was something that he felt was helping him navigate his ALS experience. Now Chris isn't a Buddhist, and he'll tell you that. Nor am I a Buddhist, but many of the principles are incredibly important to me that are actually part of my core foundation in doing the work that I do. I was fortunate enough many years ago, very early in my career, to meet Joan Halifax, Roshi Joan Halifax, whose teachings and knowledge has truly impacted not just me, but thousands and thousands of people around the world. So I got really excited when Chris was sharing with me what he was working on. And I was thinking it, but then he actually named it. Ron, do you think we can put this out, to the community? And I said, sure. So this is what we've been able to do. And, hopefully we will continue it. Chris lives in Maryland. Chris has been an integral part of our gatherings that we do. And I invite, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, please check it out. We do men of ALS gatherings, women of ALS gatherings, caregiver to caregiver gatherings. Some people like the term support groups. We use the term gatherings because it's uniquely different. And what I can share with you, and maybe Chris will just touch into this briefly when he starts his presentation. The last Men of ALS gathering we had, and again, it's men with ALS, it's men who are caregivers or fathers, sons, brothers, uncles. It's a way for men to gather. The last gathering we had was like the best one ever. Truly, absolutely extraordinary. And the interesting thing is the last month, the Men of ALS gathering was the best one ever. And the one before that was the best one ever. And the one before that was the best one ever. And I don't know why, but they're incredibly powerful. And I invite all the men to, if you're interested, register for those. Likewise, the women. It's just one of the things that we offer. So all of that said, I really appreciate Chris being here and doing this. I ask you to sit back and pay attention and listen to this man's words. And it has certainly helped him navigate all the complexities of living with ALS. And his sharings have really brought a lot of insights into the men that he's met and women through us. So, Chris, I am going to turn it over to my good friend, Chris Beutler.
Thank you, Ron. I'm really honored today that everyone turned out. I started my practice maybe a year and a half ago. I had always sort of read the Dalai Lama's books, but when the diagnosis came to me, a friend of mine who's really been studying it for 15 years said, do you have a spiritual practice? For some reason, that really came to me, and I was passionate about coming deeper in Buddhism, that a spiritual path I felt I was going to need to be able to have a foundation. I was very concerned about how I was going to be with my caretakers and my family of two young daughters. So we'll put up the first panel. That's okay, James. One thing I kind of want to say is, having studied Buddhism for some time, you don't really have to be a Buddhist. I picked up four things that I thought were very high level challenging parts of coming to terms with the disease, and I've brought them forward. But if anybody wants to go a little deeper, I'd be happy to have one-on-one meetings. I have a lot of stuff in here about books you can read, and I'm happy to send the presentation out. You want to hit the first screen, James?
Yes, Chris, let me pop that up.
No problem. Oh, Zoom giving us a
Are you
thing.
seeing it?
I'm not, no.
Okay.
And it's very interesting because if having been in Buddhism, Buddhism really is very um, connected to other religions as well. There we go. And I've met lots of people who study Buddhism to enhance their Catholicism, their if you're Jewish, a bunch of different stuff. So what I'll lead with, what's fascinating, if you start at the beginning of what Buddhism is really about. How many people have read Siddhartha? We all had that in school. And the focal point for Buddhism is that you're working on stopping your suffering. They believe that our mind is what creates the suffering. So if you look at the foundation of Buddhism, two little parts I'll talk about. One is the Four Noble Truths, where you go through and you learn what is the root of suffering and how to change your view on that. And the other really part that has inspired me is what's called bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is about putting others first. And I found for me to start focusing on others has done a world of good for me not to allow myself to become angry or frustrated with the ALS. So we can go to the next panel, James. Share through this. So as I said, my story is you don't need to be Buddhist to try some of these practices. As I was diagnosed, I really wanted my journey with ALS to be full of compassion for my family, my friends, and myself. I was deeply seeking peace of mind. I really wanted to make what time I have left have a big impact. And I really wanted to transform my thinking on the meaning of life I've lived so I could peacefully move to the next phase. We all know with ALS, we don't know that's going to happen. There's so many things going. So, hopefully, if anybody has any questions, pop in. I just want to make this a slight overview. And then if there's interest, I can give you some fun books to read. The other thing I'll say, which is really fascinating, is Buddhism celebrates death. It doesn't look at death as something, as a fear. They have the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Dalai Lama's written many books on how to die. One of their big things is the more peaceful you die, it's really important for your karma. So we'll go to the next panel, James. So what I was looking for, as I said, was compassion. And it's just so beautiful that Ron runs Compassionate Care, because I really feel like, the only thing we can really control is how we're going to view the disease we've been given. We don't have control over its progression, but we do have control over how we want to view it. So compassion, in this case, I really wanted to be able to manage my suffering, and I found by changing it to focus on others, I've done fundraisers, I'm helping people who are doing small little things, just where can I still help people? So the objective of this presentation is to show possible ways you can think about going internal and finding this compassion. And what I defined myself was, in my experience with ALS, this is about positive thoughts, feelings that give rise to such essential things in the ALS journey as hope, courage, determination, and inner strength. And that's what I was looking for. And the practice has given me a very strong foundation to adhere to those elements. We can go to the next one then, James. I'm sure we all felt this way. One of the things I really focused on was I had to recreate myself. I was a super active guy. I was a mountain biker, traveler. This was a time when I was hoping to really spend exciting adventures with my kids. I was in the creative advertising world and was able to do some fun things in that area. We'll go to the next panel. You know, for me, I tried to sit down and really identify what are my fears. I thought my family will suffer without their father and husband. I'll lose my cherished identity and individuality, and I will suffer physically and mentally. I had a very strong experience when my stepfather died of cancer. He was full of so much anger. And I watched that, and this was years ago, and I just felt I would never bring anger to the situation. I believe, you know, my progression is probably a little slower because they've seen that anger can just accelerate tension, hypertension. So for me, I was really interested in not allowing anger to enter. I thought maybe I'd stop here. Does anybody have similar feelings they had during diagnosis? Is this maybe a point we can talk and share a little bit? If anybody can bring up what sort of emotions they were facing when diagnosed.
You can use the raise hand feature in the reactions, and then you'll move to the front of the room, and we can call on you if you have a comment.
Okay, we can just move forward. I was just gonna want everybody to feel comfortable
Yeah,
to
and
engage.
and if you're not able to speak on the video, you can put a question or a comment in the chat stream. So I'll be monitoring that as we go. All right, Chris. So back to the slideshow.
Yep. So the next one is I really took time to look at my new identity. So we can go to the next panel. And what I found really fascinating, I was focusing on expanding my intellect, consciousness, spirituality, generosity, and compassion. You know, what's definitely unique about Buddhism, as we're all sort of focusing down, the control we have is it asks you to really reframe the world from an Eastern perspective, and you know whether you choose to find as a path. I found a lot of the writings are just really powerful ways to sometimes escape the way we might be getting frustrated, a little obsessed. We all have these challenges. I do too. But I found that the writings can bring a sense of calm and really help you reshape your view on your present life. Um, it's it's a very, very old practice, and you do almost take yourself on a little bit of a mental adventure, go a little deeper and see how other people in the world have dealt with big transitions and changes in life. We'll go to the next panel.
Chris, can I share something?
Absolutely, please do.
Put another way, and what Chris was speaking to is after a diagnosis, whether it's an individual with ALS or caregiver, the challenge is, how do I learn to live my life in a different way? And that's what Chris was speaking to. How do we do this differently? And what he's sharing is a way to navigate that path. Chris?
Yes, very true. And like I said, I can share several books or scripture books. It's just empowering in some ways because here we have more time than ever where we can focus on certain things like this and challenge our minds and grow spiritually. I really, in some ways, found for me the ALS was a moment of enlightenment. I mean, I was never a very altruistic individual. I never slowed down to take a look at life, and I found with ALS, I suddenly understood suffering and I can understand other people's suffering. And it has helped me to come to terms with this and focus my energies on helping others, putting them first. Not that I have to take my health as first, but just from a compassionate perspective, I found the experience to. I mean, I could have been hit by a bus. I was a bike rider. I would never been equipped. Now I'm firmly equipped in how I want to choose when the time is right.
Chris, would you be willing to share a little bit about the band bash that you put together as an example of compassionate action in service of others?
Absolutely. With my feeling and my bodhicitta, I hosted a big fundraiser here in Baltimore for a local ALS organization, only because that's how we were going to get people engaged. So I did a full day music band fundraiser, and people came, and my intentions were just to share a feeling of great compassion and love in the event between the bands and all the people that came out. And the auction, we raised like $65,000, which shocked me. But I wanted to two things. I wanted to raise money to help those in need, but I also really wanted to share an experience with very close friends of mine that would be memorable that we did together and we all made success. And it was partially hopeful to have everybody around me feel like I need to help other people. It felt really good. So it was pretty much a community based concept to bring everyone in to hopefully grow compassion and help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should we return to the slideshow?
Sure.
Yes.
And I'll send everybody the link to the concert if they want to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's a really fun thing. It was amazing with the press release. All these bands donated their time. Everybody came out. There's such great nature in people if we, I think, help them find a personal and an easy way to help. So as I went through this with my wife, she had one wish. She said, I hope you can die happy. And what's fascinating is that's what Buddhism promotes, to get to the best state of mind when passing, that it's going to help you have a better experience and take stock in what you've done and be proud of the life you've left. I mean, it's all hard for us to leave, but we can find ways we can feel better about it. We'll go to the next panel, James. So here were the 4 parts I thought I'd share today. One is meditation. You can do a lot with meditation. I start my day with my meditation, and my wife gets a break. She sits me down. I focus. I fill my mind with very positive thoughts. Acceptance is another big thing that I had to work on. How do we accept others who want to care and bring help? And I found over time, allowing people to do things has become a powerful and huge impact, because people love us. They feel helpless. Even if they're small things, that's really been a great thing. Buddhism really works on purification. So if you have regrets or things that are keeping you unsettled, they have a practice where you can go through and purify these feelings and I carry them with you, clearing your spiritual state out the best it can be so you can transition peacefully is really part of it. Then there's the spiritual practice. And what it did for me is really about honesty about my ALS, and create an opportunity for inner peace. We'll go to the next panel. So, and we all know the power of meditation. There's various kinds of meditation that anyone here can participate in. There's in Buddhism, it's shamatha. It's just finding calm, abiding. There's tantric meditation when you're meditating on certain deities in your mind, certain processes. But I think what's really important, I've helped people meditate, it's really helpful if you sit with yourself and create intentions for meditations. If your intentions are, I want to feel calm, I want to have compassion, I want to be able to help others. I find the more you create a set of intentions, the more powerful your meditation practices will be, because you're trying to get a form of fruition out of your practice. We can go to the next one, James. And I've done research. If you've ever heard this, meditation can help with your physical health and your mental health. We all know it can really reduce blood pressure, bringing down all types of anxiety. It does boost immune functions, and using this can really do that. And I'm trying to focus on reduction of inflammation, because that's a big part of ALS. And on the mental side, can you work towards inner peace, reduce anger, fear, and suffering, a deeper focus on compassion? And what I really felt is, no matter how far I'm going to progress, I can still meditate. That's not going to be taken away from us. Go to the next panel. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Chris, let me just stop for a second and look in the chat and see what we've got. There's a few. Okay, some people have been having some trouble with internet connections. Okay, I just wanted to check and see if there were any questions, and there aren't any. So, does anyone have any comments or questions now? Just raise your hand in the reactions, and we'll move you to the front of the line. All
One
good?
thing I will say is Buddhism is one of many wisdom traditions, if you will. And for me, it's a matter of sometimes we're fortunate enough to find something that we can, that we're drawn to, that touches us, that allows us to open up, go deep, that allows us to find maybe some calm, clarity, and inner growth, if you will. And even with Buddhism, sometimes it takes deep inquiry, which is really important to me, along with our team. And that's one of the things that drew me to Chris, is his ability to, this is the man that's doing his work. And Buddhism is part of it for him. For you, it doesn't have to be Buddhism. Yet for me, I've been fortunate to just take parts of this and parts of that in a very pan-cultural kind of way. But there's many, many practices. So I really invite you, hopefully, if nothing else, you're able to take one, maybe two nuggets of what Chris is sharing and incorporate it in your life. Okay? There you go, Chris.
Yeah, that's my intention too. I just want to share what has worked for me, and if it helps others, that's a beautiful thing.
James, slides. Thank you.
So we'll go to the next one. And I'm going to share, I have several books that I'm recommending. I'm happy to send this presentation out. So I was saying earlier, I start my day with my meditation practice. I've seen my wife and kids become very supportive. They've witnessed the benefits, and I think they're comforted to see a practice that reduces suffering, happiness. And I find too, if I wake up with a bad day or a good day, meditation is like a refuge. I can get recentered and come back to like a calm abiding. But it is revered by my family, and I think they've seen positive benefits. You can go to the next one, James. So here's a few resources. Like I said, be happy to send them to you. Ron has created an incredible CD that's perfect for this. And then here's two other books if you choose to want to start a practice. You know, getting it started is it's a step, but the more you do it, the stronger it becomes. Well, I thought I'd put a couple quotes out here. You know, this is from the Dalai Lama. The place to stay untouched by death does not exist. It does not exist in space. It does not exist in the ocean, nor if you stand in the middle of a mountain. We all know, like taxes, this is inevitable, and permanence is a big part of that. And their approach is if you meditate on that and understand that, you can have a more positive outlook and be more mindful of the time you have. We can go to the next one. So the other part was just acceptance. You know, this was probably the hardest thing for me when I was first diagnosed. How will I accept this? How will I transform myself? And through this practice, I look at it as, you know, moving forward and trying to find peace of mind. You know, of course, I'm worried about pain, helplessness, dependency, all type of things. But this practice for me has allowed me to really come to terms with what has happened, redefine myself, and therefore I just don't have any fear of passing anymore. I hope it doesn't happen for some time. I want to be here when the time comes. I have a very strong practice that I can accept. We'll go to the next one. And like I said, I know it's really tough to accept this is not a friendly disease. We all know how ruthless this thing is, but through some of the Buddhism's readings, you might have a change of perspective. I found that Buddhism helped with my inner and outer acceptance. You know what I mean? So I don't change my ways. I have this thing, and it helped me transform my ideas, adjust, focus on helping others and putting my family first when decisions needed to be made. We go to the next one. And this is just kind of a quote as I've looked at these things. It's allowed me to focus on my family and friends. Um, I have very open conversations with people about this being a terminal disease, and it's fascinating how much people's hearts open. In some ways, we can become teachers for people. We can have these conversations, and it's just interesting. I think most people have an interest, but they feel fearful of talking about it. You know what I mean? But I opened myself up, and I said, I'm an open book. Ask any question you have, and it's validating for me to find these emotions with other people, and a lot of them have become very positively affected, and they've looked closer at their lives too. We can go to the next one. Again, a couple of books on reading the stuff. The Dalai Lama books are beautiful. They're simple. They're small. And just maybe putting some different views in your mind stream can have a powerful impact on your world view. That's what happened for me. Might happen for everybody else, but I found it really transformed my ability to have new reference points and other ways to look at what I was facing. You go to the next panel. This is more quotes from the Dalai Lama. Like I said, they get really into suffering, and they believe the root cause of our pain and suffering is our own state of mind, and that we can seek happiness through the purification of our minds. We'll go to the next one. So I would say when we talked about purification, it's about purifying emotional defilements and obscurations, liberating the mind, and finding a way to come to terms with the life we've lived, and in some ways absolve our feelings of guilt and other aspects, which, can bring peace of mind. We'll go to the next one. I did a little research. What was common regrets of end of life? Wish I had lived a life true to myself. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings, stayed in touch with friends, let myself be happier and live in the moment. And these were ones I was just doing some research, and I think they're valid things we have, but they're things we can look at and work on if we so choose. And then we'll go to the next one. And again, the purification process is just looking back over your life. I've taken the time to celebrate my relationships, my accomplishments, my failures, bring them all together. And I, through this, have learned I have a lot more value to people than I realized. If you open yourself up, give your friends and family time to talk, you find these subtleties that people hadn't told you before, and their nuances, and they just validate you lived a good life, you cared for people, you connected with people, and it's been something that for me, I have visitors all the time, and we don't have small conversations. We really sink into the meaning of life and what are we doing? What is our purpose? And it has become a powerful, powerful experience. We'll go to the next panel. A couple books on purification if anybody wants to. Um, I see a great thing just popped up, James, more about death and this process. Um, I can certainly prepare people. There's very good books on how Buddhism approaches your process of dying. I have a teacher, she has a YouTube channel, and I can certainly happily recommend some books. And then if anybody wanted to read them and then get back together, we could certainly do that. But it's pretty amazing. They literally have like a playbook on the process of death, and they celebrate death. I mean, Buddhism believes in your consciousness is reincarnated at your body, but they have a lot of things on how to die peacefully, how to die meaningfully, and there it's powerful. You know what I mean? In Western culture, we're terrified of death. Everybody just runs from it, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are other views of that, and that's what helped me become calmer and accepting.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that my speech is sticking around because I'm meditating and just being calm and finding peace of mind. I really feel like it's helping with the disease as well.
Yeah. Chris, going back to Terry's question, concern, the white elephant in the room for all of us living with ALS, the white elephant in the room for all of us not living with ALS is end of life, is mortality. And for some of you that know me, you've heard me say that if our physicians, doctors, hospice nurses, hospice organizations, chaplains, all of us, but especially in the world of healthcare, if we're not willing to become more familiar with the reality of our own mortality, our own dying, then how are we best able to tend to the people that we're caring for? And I contend that you can't. Thus, in my experience over these years, I've seen that it's really, really important to become, for me, to become more familiar with my own mortality. If I haven't been able to do that, then there's no way I'd be able to do what I do and continually showing up for the people that I and my team show up for. So whether some of that has come from the Buddhist traditions or the First Nation or my Jewish religion or my belief in God or Buddha or Moses or nature, there's no one way in navigating all of this. And our work is about tending to and caring for individuals navigating the complexities of living with ALS. And when invited, exploring end of life, when invited. And for some, it's a really hard conversation to have. But when invited, it's where the art of language is so very, very important. And many of us cannot do that alone. And that's why sometimes it can be good to have a trusted other to help facilitate that conversation, because it can be really, really emotional. And oftentimes people are bringing their own fears, their own baggage, and nothing gets accomplished. Real quick, and I'll go back to Chris. There was a family long ago, and I was invited over, and mom was, getting close. And a lot of children, like 7, 8 adult children, and they knew I was there. Mom had asked to see me. So the caregiver's in there getting her all settled and put together. And they asked me to sit. I sat, and then mom was ready. And as I'm going in, the daughter says, "Careful what you say to her, Ron. Careful." And it's like, okay, I got you. I've been down this road before. So I go in the room, and the daughter's standing there, and the mother kind of shoos her away. And I look at her, and she's tilting her head. I said, "Let me go to the front of the bed." And I did. And I'm looking at her. And I merely said, "I'm guessing that things are moving along for you?" She says, "Yes, Ron." So I put that in the form of a question. And then I looked at her and said, "Would you like to know what it is that I know and what I'm aware of about what this is going to look like for you?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Just to be clear," I said, "we're talking about the end of your life, correct?" She said, "Yes." So I was able to share with her what I knew and what was possible and what was going to unfold for her. So we finished up, and she had a big smile on her face. I said, "Would you like for me to bring your children in?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Would you like for me to share with them what we spoke of?" She said, "Please, Ron." I said, "Beautiful." And I did. And we did. And it just completely let the air out of the balloon, and everyone could breathe, because they were just not equipped and had no idea how to have these conversations. So that's one of the things that we offer. That's one of the things Chris has been working on and can offer. And so for, who was it that had the question? Was it Terry? Yeah, Terry, feel free to reach out. We can explore all of that. And there you go. Okay. And I believe, Ron, Terry, I would want you to control your grief. I wouldn't want you to control your grief. It is honest and authentic, and in some ways a gift. Please let others be with you in your grief and tears and inability to talk. It is a gift to them. And what I would say, if it's possible, if they can be with you. I was with another family yesterday and 3 daughters, and it was really hard for them to be together. They needed someone there to kind of hold that space and bring them together. It was just facilitating, but it's finding that right person to do that if it is too hard. Tears are a beautiful, beautiful thing. Be with those tears. And it can be really beautiful and very transformative if we allow that to unfold. Chris.
That was very nice, Ron. I agree with you. And, we can balance everything if we want to hold a bit of our grief, but find other pieces of Buddhism as sort of a self-controlling spiritual practice. So you kind of go in the directions and find the pieces that help you come to terms with your suffering. We're going next. I think we're almost wrapped up, James.
Okay, let me just get current with what's in the chat and get all the voices in here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, wanted to read from Tom, who said, "Thank you for your presentation. Well done. Forgive my early departure. The Catholic monk Thomas Merton would have enjoyed and shared your thoughts. Peace be with you." Terry, yeah. And then Terry, who we've already been in conversation with. "I want to talk more about my death, and this is a process with my family, but I fall into grief and tears and lose my breath and my voice completely. I want to control this any ideas, and that's kind of what we've been talking about. Lynn says, for many pals, mortality is not that hard to realize, but the major stress is the immense burden on loved ones. Can you comment on this? Do you want to say
Absolutely.
anything about that,
Yeah,
Chris?
sure, absolutely. I think a lot about my family and my daughters, and I'm finding, and Ron has shared with me too, some of these kids after this, it accelerates them on a path of maturity. Ron and I've talked a lot about this stuff, and I find I try to share everything with my loved ones, and my kids are helping and they're participating. And in some ways, I think since ALS is giving us a little more time, we can use that time to find ways to very honestly and humanly connect with our loved ones and create value with the time that we have. So, it's helped me, it's helped my kids. It's not like they don't know. They just go to Google and their ALS is a fatal disease with no cure. But again, coming back to my bodhicitta, I think about what do they need, not what do I need, and try to practice that.
And if I could speak, you know, the word burden is always challenging for me. I'm not sure I met anyone who hasn't thought the thought of, I don't want to be a burden, or I am being a burden on my family. I think that's quite a natural human feeling. And yet, many people I meet, if the roles were reversed, you'd be tending to and caring for your loved one as they are tending and caring for you. And yet the reality is, this is just what is. And some families have the capacity to navigate this, where the weight of the burden can be lifted off their shoulders because of the support that they have and the love. Ron Gladys, would you speak to burden for just a couple minutes, and then we'll turn it back over to Chris? This is my friend Ron Gladys, if you don't mind. I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. Well, I'm actually currently writing a book, and it's called Love, Loyalty, and the Right Thing to Do. So when I was helping my wife, I did it out of love because we've been married for a long time. And then on those days that I really wasn't in love with her for one reason or the other, I did it out of loyalty because she was my wife. She gave me 2 sons, and I never went to the third part, which was the right thing to do. I never had to go there. I did go to the loyalty a couple times. I got to tell you, we were married, so. But that has sustained me, and through all of that, and so the other thing that has sustained me has been gratitude. Just looking at our relationship and the years we spent together and our time, and I think it was important for me to keep on understanding how grateful I was for her, for my children, for our life, and for me, and for myself. So that's my quick feedback on that, Ron, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Ron. And I'm going to speak about Ron and Mariah at the end. But as an FYI, Ron tended to and cared for and lived life fully with his wife, Mariah, who lived for 37 years with ALS. And I'll talk more in a bit. Chris?
Wow. That was very beautiful, Ron. I'm with you. And this is just to help give people other pieces, and we can all come to this place in many ways. But it's very touching, Ron, how you've encapsulated this. And gratitude is a really important word. I try to have gratitude all the time. I think we're almost wrapped, James. You want to hit the screen? So we'll go to the next panel. Just some quick quotes I was bringing out, like I said, because Buddhism is very accepting and preparing for end of life. We can go to the next one. So I just wanted to say if there was a need for a spiritual practice, one of the big things for Buddhism is coming to terms with impermanence, and being able to have that. Things change all the time. At the end, an understanding of impermanence motivates Buddhists to improve their quality of life and to achieve enlightenment. You never know. I mean, we don't know when we're going to go. It's going to happen fast, going to happen slow. Then we'll go to the last panel. I just wanted to say, regardless of anyone's spiritual path, my acceptance of ALS through my Buddhist practice has delivered me peace. I'm prepared that I'm happy. I feel this was a gift in some ways, and I'm hoping that also wish on my wife. And this is offered. I turned it around and made it an offer of a time to go deep, as Ron was saying, really confront reality and find a time to use this as a gift to have a better enlightenment and understanding of what life offered and what it has done for me. I think that's the last panel, James.
James, hold it there. Stop and go back. I'd like to read that if I can, Chris.
Sure.
I feel lucky that ALS afforded me the opportunity to discover a practice that is making my shortened lifetime valuable. By using compassion to focus on the suffering of others instead of my own suffering, there's a great peace in my house. I'm confident that although it will be sad that I'm leaving my family, Buddhism has reflected that I am not suffering. Our suffering is what our loved ones fear the most. It is my hope by dying happy, I can reduce my loved ones' grief and help them prepare for their own impermanence. Yeah, that's well written, Chris, very well written.
Thank you. And I feel like with my kids, I think if I'm not fearful of death, I hope that feeling reaches them as well. You know, I don't want it to be a traumatic experience for them. I feel like if they feel I've left in peace, that's going to be a much easier way for them to accept I wasn't going to be here for them for longer, you know?
Yeah. And what I would say is we should not have to have such a diagnosis, ALS, to be having these conversations around mortality. You know, it's important. The end of our life is part of living our life, right? And the more that we can navigate that terrain, as you spoke of impermanence before, I mean, life is such a mystery. You know, we know people, or there are other people that we don't know who went to bed last night healthy as can be. In fact, I had a schoolmate who passed away several days ago. He had diabetes. 3 days before, he had his checkup and he was fine. and he passed away. So, though, a lot of what we're talking about that Chris has brought to the table is end of life, but the importance about living our life as best as we can, with as much love and compassion as possible. And when we have those moments of sadness, of grief, of feeling that we're burdened, working through that as best as we can, that's being human. It's being human. And if we're fortunate, we've got a network of friends, and a supportive family, if we're lucky, because everyone doesn't. And, do the best that we can with that. So, yeah. Chris?
I think that we're pretty wrapped up. I have a short little summary here that I learned that, yes, we do have control over our suffering. We have a choice. It's not an easy one, but we can change that. And I feel like too, we can advance our cognitive abilities to help others. And, this can be just a companion to your other faith. It doesn't have to be something that you say, hey, I'm going to go on this path. But there are a lot of good readings that I feel just bring the mind stream to the foreground with peaceful thoughts and the ability to maybe come to terms a bit more with what we're all facing, which was my mission statement.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, that's Chris's email, and you can also contact him through us. Okay. So I want to share a couple things. Chris mentioned, and if anyone's interested, I'm happy to send you copies. I have many. This is the meditation CD Chris was speaking of, Cultivating Compassion. It's I think 2 CD set. This is something called Yoga Nidra, which can be really, really powerful. And with this, you just have to sit, close your eyes, and listen to the voice, and scan your body, follow the voice. So someone who's really, really important to me and who has been a big influence, even when I didn't know her and or Ron, and that's my friend Ron Gladys and his wife, Mariah Fenton Gladys. And quick story, when I met them, I'd heard about them for many years. And then their son called, Mom and Dad would like to meet you. And so I went down to Pennsylvania, we met. And as I was leaving dinner, Mariah and Ron gave me this little booklet called Bitterness is Not an Option. Bitterness is Not an Option. So I took it back to the hotel. It's a 20-minute read. Took it back to the hotel, read it, went back to their house the next morning to say goodbye, and said, do you have any more copies of Bitterness is Not an Option? And they said, sure. We need 6, 12. I said, how about a couple hundred? All righty. It's just filled with wonderful wisdom. Wonderful, wonderful wisdom. Okay? Just like we heard from Chris. Beautiful, wonderful wisdom. This is incredible wisdom. There's no how-to here. We have many copies, right? Feel free, I'll send you a copy. Likewise, if you can't hold this up to listen, we put it, this is Mariah right here. All right, I have many CDs if you have a CD player. And you'll hear Ron and a dear friend of theirs. It's a Q&A and it's really powerful and I think very, very important. And it's just another pathway and information to bring in. You know, everything that Chris is about, the work that Mariah did as a Gestalt therapist, revered in that world, the work that we do, the work that our colleagues do. And Chris, in a minute, I want you to speak to a Men of ALS gathering just from your perspective and the experience, not the stories, but the experience. You know, you folks are living as a caregiver or an individual with ALS. There's no book to tell anybody how to do such a thing. Yet what we are bringing and what Chris is all about and what Mariah is about and my friend Julie Brown Yao and Jeffrey and Tom Daly and all my colleagues, it's sacred work. We're on sacred ground, right? And that might sound big, but it's, to me, the truth. And to be able to navigate something like all of you are navigating is incredibly important, and to find the right type of support along the way, because I know no one that can do this by themselves as an individual living with ALS or a caregiver. And when I've seen people attempt to do that, it can get really, really hard. And I've seen too many identities lost. So that's why we do what we do, and to be able to support Chris and others like him. And Chris, I'm not sure you know what you've now created for us.
Well, that's my hope. And, you know, I
Right.
just taken
So-
the path of honesty and sharing. And your point, Ron, the groups we have, I find are exceptionally poignant. As you said, the last one we had, someone that brought up a really profound question, and people were all coming back with positive answers. I'm really impressed how each one of us chooses our way to come to terms with this challenge we're faced. And it's just, I'm always inspired by many of the people here, because we really are being challenged to the stretching our ability to handle this. But if you believe you have the mental fortitude, I think you can stay in control.
Yeah. James, there's a couple questions, or one that I saw. Can you read that and Chris can
Yeah,
respond, please?
absolutely. Yeah, let's back up a little bit where we were. Okay. Yep. I wanted to mention Ron Gladys commented to Terry, I wouldn't want you to control your grief. It is honest and authentic, and in some ways a gift. Please let others be with you in your grief and tears and inability to talk. It is a gift to them. And then Matt Hogan says, I agree with Lane. Bothers me so much, that burden I'm putting on my wife and children, but mostly my wife. Dolly says, this is a beautiful quote. Chris, thank you for sharing so much of yourself. Chris Beutler says, thanks to everyone for showing up and listening. Chris, it was excellent. Lane says, Dolly says, Chris, when you spoke about reflecting on your life accomplishments and failures, I was just wondering, when you think about failures, do you try to make amends or just accept yourself for falling short, as we all do? Chris, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. I think that's interesting. And I think a lot about parenting my kids. I've always held the belief that if you aren't having failures, you're not really learning, you're not evolving. But I always feel like I look at those things and say, okay, I took a risk. It didn't work, but it was a profound lesson for me. I think life by and large needs to have failures. I hope my kids fail and get themselves out of the situation. But I don't carry them as extra burden or weight. I look at them, could I have done it differently, but I embrace the fact that I at least took risks, challenged myself. I've always sort of embraced failures at times.
So in relationship to the question, Chris, and Ron too, if Ron, if you would like to comment just about, is it important when you do make a mistake, or maybe inadvertently miss something or hurt someone, is it important to make amends in the moment or later, or do we let it just kind of let it go? What do you guys think?
I feel like if you believe you hurt someone, then to find a way to reach out and make amends on that is probably important. If you're in this situation and you're honest, it can't hurt for us to reach out and try to put some closure to it if you feel like what you did hurt someone. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to guess we all know what it feels like to be afraid to confront something if we've hurt someone's feelings, or they've hurt our feelings. Living with something like you folks are living with. Who was it that said, Ron spoke to it. Sometimes, it's all not going to be nice. We're human, and I can be hard, I can be angry, I can upset someone, or they can upset me. I learned a long time ago, and I'm still learning how to take that weight off my shoulder. And if I'm not willing to confront that situation or make amends, or say that I'm sorry, or check in with someone, it can fester. And I think one of the things living with something like this can allow us to do is kind of like awakening. There's an awakening, because, with this diagnosis, what you're all living with is the finality of your life. Who has time, who has time to be in the chaos and the uncertainties and carry around all of those burdens, or that new burden? It's hard enough to get rid of the old burdens. All the excess weight that we carry on our shoulders that weigh us down, that get in the way of truly living our life authentically. And, I think it's a practice. It doesn't have to be Buddhism. It's about being human and coming to a place of realization that, I need to be able to communicate. And, I see this often, as with the family yesterday, beautiful mother and her kids. She's not ready to die, but that's what she wanted to talk about. What is this going to look like? But I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And to sit there and just share what I knew, and then allow her and her daughters to share, because without that, they wouldn't be able to navigate that path. That's just an example. It could be as simple as going to the grocery store and buying the wrong applesauce, right? So, it's important to take the time to engage, especially those times where there's a little bit of angst. And because who has time not to do that? For me, I use the term walking into a home being very free and very clear and clean. And when we're carrying the weights where someone crossed me or upset me or said something that hurt my feelings, it's really important to, deal with that, talk about that as quickly as possible, get it off your plate. Otherwise, the plate just fills up. And, all of you have enough on your plates. It's how do we live our lives as cleanly and as clearly as we can? I think that's what's important.
Ron, let me say something from a caregiver standpoint that, over the years, it is really, really incredibly important that I don't beat myself up because of mistakes I made and things I should have done, should have, would have, could have. And that's a very hard thing to understand unless one of the things that Mariah taught was a concept of arriving already loved. That is that you wherever you go, you are loved by yourself. And that's really, really important. So from a caregiver standpoint, I think that you need to instill some of that inside of you. You need to care for yourself. You need to love yourself. Just like an ALS patient, like Mariah wanted to care for herself and to love herself. That was very important. But from a caregiver standpoint, I know personally how important it was for me to be able to function and continue going forward if I took really good care of myself. And part of that is not beating myself up. If I'm making a mistake or if I don't do what I wanted to do or not enough, or just the day was much too much for me, I have to give myself some slack. And that's a long-term solution for going forward. And Mariah had ALS for 37 years, so I needed a long-term solution. We both did. And our long-term solution is really to care for ourselves and love ourselves. And care for ourselves is just, taking a long bath as well. Whatever you need to go forward, I think. And, so I just want to say thank you, Chris, for this talk. I just thought you were terrific. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. And I was just hoping to share with my brothers and sisters, caretakers, and people living with it that we do have options. We do have ways to make it work. And Ron, my wife, speaks a lot about that too. She's on the social networks and caretakers. I love what you said, because you do need to give yourself a break. And my wife and I talk a lot about that, because now she's getting massage. Sometimes she doesn't feel she's doing a great job. I always tell her, I'm so fortunate. You're an incredible caretaker. I know it's hard for caretakers, as is those living with ALS.
Any other thoughts, people? Oh, I see movement.
Steve's got
Steve Horn is making a move. Unmute yourself, Steve.
I was going to try to type, but I can try to talk. Thank you so much, all of you, for this. It's just really a blessing that you're sharing it. And I guess I'd add, as far as the caregiver part, that for me, I think some of my work now is to be able to not be so demanding sometimes. It's easy, when you're not able to do things. I used to use my hands a lot. I can't as much. And so I'll say sometimes I'd like that.
Well, Steve, we're not hearing you very well. You're really breaking up.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm breaking. I'll get rid of my video if I can.
It's still not good, Steve. Maybe you are going to have to type it in. I don't know. Yeah, do you want to just type in what you were going to say? I hate sometimes the technology just doesn't cooperate with us. Okay, Steve's in the chat, and his okay, he's going to type. Let's see what comes up here.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, I'm just saying, I just want to say if I can be more patient with my caregiver, Polly, I think that would be a good thing, don't you? Just being more patient. As far as, it's easy to want everything, but so that's all. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. I wanted to,
Well,
okay, so what you're speaking to, Steve, and what I've heard others just bringing up, and it reminds me of what one of Chris's slides when he talked about purification of the mind. And as Ron Hoffman was speaking about coming in clear and clean, and if there's resentments or bitterness or something, some unfinished business, how that can clutter our minds and make us less able to show up fully for the situation that we're faced with. So I would really love to hear Ron or Chris say a word or two more about the importance of having some way to clear our minds and clear our thoughts and process our emotions so that we can be present in the moment.
You want to tackle that, Ron?
Patience.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to me. Living our normal lives outside the world of ALS and the culture that we live in and the things that are going on in the world today is hard enough as it is. We're battered with all of this information and technology and social media. So it can kind of get confusing when we're in a place of uncertainty and concern and confusion. And that's why to have a practice, whatever that practice might be, is important. To believe in something is important. And we all have different ways of doing that, whether it's walking out in nature or sitting down to meditate or doing yoga or finding quiet time for self-reflection or prayer. There's many, many, many ways. And I'm not sure. For me, need to find myself doing it more. But what takes me to a place of calm, when I'm in a place of angst, if you will, because far too often I move too fast. It's just my way. But it says when I go in to a home, when I can remember, and hopefully I remember most of the times, I pause. And for me, I'll say a prayer, or I will call in. And for me, it's the ancestral piece. I deal with the ancestors. That's who I talk to. And for me, the ancestors are the great-great-grandparents, my lineage, many who I have no idea who they are, but we all have lineage. We all go back generation after generation after generation after generation. And of course, we have our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, if we were lucky enough to know or remember their pictures. But that's where I come from. That's the blood that goes through my veins and is in my body. That's my spiritual practice, if you will. That's what brings me solace. That's what brings me calm. It's finding whatever it is that works for us that can bring us calm. Maybe it's sitting on the deck and just watching the water, or listening to the rain, or sitting with our animal. Whatever works for you. But it's important to have some sort of practice, whatever it might be. And maybe practice is a word that scares people because it means I have to do something. It's not about doing. It needs to be a very natural and something that we can grow into that brings us support. And then, of course, if we're lucky enough to have a partner or a friend that we can talk to that will truly just listen without interrupting or try to fix what it is we're experiencing. Now, sometimes there's nothing to fix. And of course, the practice of mirroring, when someone is sharing with you, or you are sharing with someone, and because oftentimes we're not hearing what the person is saying. And so for me, it's like, I think I heard you, if I'm not sure what they said, I think I heard you say, and you repeat it. And maybe you've got it right, and oftentimes maybe you don't. And they get to repeat it again. So it's also, again, patience and just leading, coming from our heart, getting out of our heads and coming from our heart. And just finding what's possible that works for you. And there's many possibilities about navigating all of this. So, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's really well.
Chris froze up there. I think he's going to have to come back in. Oh, he's back.
Unmute, Chris.
I really agree that patience is a big part, and I would add perseverance too. So, patience we offer to others, perseverance for us to continually move forward and come to terms with things that might be besetting us, or perseverance in finding peace of mind. But those two are really hand in glove, I think, patience and perseverance.
And I would invite everyone to be curious. Be curious. It's always a powerful and sometimes a beautiful thing to take a sip of something that we've never had before, that we've never tasted before. Had I not had the capacity or the willingness in combating my fears to have a sip of something that I'd never experienced before, trust me, I'd not be sitting before you. So life is about continuous change, and change, I think, brings growth. So I invite y'all just to be open to all the different possibilities out there and to be gentle with one another.
Well, I really thank everybody for turning up for this. I hope little pieces might help. I just felt a need to share. And James, if you want to email people the presentation, if anybody ever wants to just chat one-on-one, I'm more than open to participate. Just want to be here for others.
Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Just
take in the chats, Chris.
Yeah, just looking in the chat for the final, make sure everybody's voice gets in here. Ron saying, Chris, thank you so much for your authentic sharing. You are an amazing man.
Yeah, beautiful thank yous. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Like I said, it's just, and Ron stated it too, we can all find our own path. And I just know, as tough as this is, I really am honored to be able to share with all of you today things that worked for me. And we just have to find a way to make this the best it can be. Not easy, I know.
For sure.
Right.
Excellent. Just a couple more things. Martha says, just wonderful, Chris. It all resonates deeply with me and my work going forward. Martha's on our staff. Tricia says, thank you, Chris, for sharing your story. What a gift. Dolly says, thank you. Susan, thank you for sending the recording. An important session. Susan says, thank you. And you are
Susan.
You are a great comfort, Chris.
Appreciate that, everyone. I really do. It really means the world to me.
Well, blessings, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah.
And we'll close it out for today.